You need to see Logan's Run.
I need to rewatch it.
You need to rewatch Logan's Run.
For sure.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, wait a sec. Hey, Angie Wang, welcome to the Film Threat Podcast.
Mic check.
Yes.
Mic check. Is this working?
Yes, it is. I'm looking at the levels.
Awesome.
We're recording.
I'm used to a lot of feedback every time.
Yeah. Well, we can fix it. We'll fix it in post. But I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. I'm a big fan of Film Threat.
Oh,
now.
you are? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's so great to hear. I love that. And
I love Bradley. Shout out to Bradley Gibson.
Yeah, Bradley Gibson, who wrote the review for your film MDMA.
Yes.
Which, wow, if half of what happened in the film happened in your real life,
yes.
Oh my God.
I would say most of it happened, but not necessarily in that time frame at that specific time. So I kind of mashed like 30 years of experience into, a 1 year narrative.
I mean, it's first of all, just striking right off the bat, amazing soundtrack.
Yes.
The soundtrack is so good. I'm thinking, how did you get all those songs?
So I had this great guy, the great music supervisor, Louis Ferrara, who did like a step deal. So he basically approaches these studios and goes like, look, we don't have any fucking money, but we do love your music, and if we ever do make it big, we will pay you. So we pay them like a very, I will call it a reasonable fee to use the music. We had to pay up because it's the Most Favored Nation, so we had to pay up because of the Cars song.
Right.
I think Rick Ocasek watched that threesome scene a few times.
Oh, right.
That's my understanding.
Right.
Just to make sure that it was right.
Okay, that's great. Oh, wow.
So we got 5 songs like that, and then I was like completely out of money, and I was like, I'm fucked because I have no money. Jeffrey Allen Jones, who did my music, was really generous and gave me some of the stuff that he had done. And then I did get someone to come in and score the music, Peipei Chung, who did a fantastic job. But I also just got really lucky. Ron Yuan, who played my dad, knew MC Light. He had directed her like a music video. So he was like, I think Light's going to like this movie. So she came in and screened the movie at my place, and we hung out for a little bit. She had her little white fluffy dog with her, and she's like this tiny, beautiful woman, and she's like, I'm going to give you some free music. So she was so generous, and her music is phenomenal. So we used it, in the when the credits are rolling, during the credit crawl, and a number of different scenes. And then Moby also was super generous and gave some free music.
Cool. Well, let's talk about where this project came from. It's partially based on your life.
Yes.
First of all, you're the character that's in the film.
Yes.
The character that's in the film she's kind of a party girl, right?
Yeah.
Going to school, and also is quite talented at chemistry.
She's a pretty smart girl.
Really smart girl, who is able to concoct a formula for ecstasy.
Yes.
That ends up being incredible. I mean, this is, in a way, it's a little Breaking Bad-ish in a sense.
It is a little Breaking Bad-ish.
Yeah, I mean in all the best sense, right?
My friends are like, it's like Breaking Bad meets Girls.
Oh, wow.
Or something like that.
Oh, yeah, but it, yeah, I mean, and just what you see her. See, I don't want to say you.
Yeah, she's a different character than I am.
But I mean, how. See, I don't even know if I can ask.
How much is true?
How much is true? Yeah, like.
I would say that I had a strong hand in it. I did have help in real life, but in real life, some people don't want their shit all up on the screen.
Right.
So, and it just played better if the character did it herself. So she did indeed assist in the synthesizing 3,4-methyldioxymethamphetamine, and shared it with a few thousand of her best friends for a small fee.
Wow! And so, I mean, I want to ask, so you.
Were you a dealer? Is that what
yeah. I was gonna. You took the question right out of my mouth.
Yeah.
I mean, for a short time.
For a short time, yeah. I mean, I was pretty desperate for money, and I was also a pretty damaged kid. And when you come from the types of neighborhoods that I grew up in, you tend to have a different idea of what entrepreneurialism is. So
where did you grow up?
Kind of all over the place. I actually counted up the schools that I went to. I went to 12 different schools in 12 years of going to school.
Oh, wow.
Including some pretty like shitty neighborhoods. We stayed in Newark for a little while, which is a total hellhole. Palisades Park, which is a very working class kind of blue collar area. I lived in the Virgin Islands, on the island of St. Croix, and lived in Austin, Texas for a brief time. So I kind of bounced around all over the place, but I was born in Queens.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what made you even think that, hey, I want to tell my story, but not only do I want to tell my story, I want to be the one to tell it?
Yeah.
Because you are bearing your soul, not just in the sense of, I mean, we can take the party aspect out of it, the sex out of it, the drug dealing out of it. It's
a pretty personal story.
It's a very personal story.
Yeah.
Your relationship with your father,
yes,
and it is very personal.
Yes,
and you see that arc there. So tell me.
My father still doesn't say I love you.
Really?
I know he would crawl through glass for me and like do whatever he had to for me. But he still like we'll be driving around and I'll have him on speakerphone, my kid and I, and I'm like, check this out, Jade, and I'll be like, I love you, click. And my daughter and I just howl laughing because we just know that's him now.
That's just the end of the conversation.
Yeah,
he knows
sometimes
it's the end.
the most he'll say is, so do I. Because I'll be like, I love you, Pop. And he'll be like, so do I.
So he gets, okay, well, that's an acknowledgement, and that's in his way.
Yes.
That works.
That's like a big, like, I love you. Like if he were Italian, that would be it.
Right. but how, I mean, I just can't imagine what that would be like to decide, well, I'm gonna write this movie. Not only that, I'm gonna direct this movie.
Yeah.
Not only that, I'm just gonna tell very personal aspects.
My all shit up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it started in a very sort of personal way. I mean, I think so. A number of things happened. I found myself sort of in this situation where I didn't have to like really work for a living anymore. And I had a good run in Silicon Valley, and I was with a guy who was super generous and had a really good run in Silicon Valley. So I sort of found myself in this situation where I was like, what the fuck do I do with myself? Like I gotta figure out something to occupy my time, because I found that I was a very poor PTA mom. Like I literally, I sat in this meeting and these people were they were fighting over whether the girls should wear ivory or white, and I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I got shit to do. Like we gotta come on, let's move this along, ladies.
Right.
So I kept thinking, like, I got to find a way to give back, because I should be dead like 100 different times, 100 different ways. And I really feel very grateful and very lucky, that I get to live this kind of life. So I kept thinking, like, what do I do to give back? So I founded a nonprofit, and we basically went into sort of, crappy neighborhoods, like similar to where I grew up. And we worked with these, like, inner city middle school kids who are at risk. And gave them, we did like a process group. Like we basically gave them a venue to be able to talk about the real shit that was going on in their lives. And I found that, like, at first I'd walk in, they'd be like, I'm not gonna fucking talk about my shit in front of you, lady. Like, who the fuck are you? And so I found that by being really honest about where I came from and some of the trials and tribulations that I moved through as a youngster, it emboldened them to be able to tell their stories. So, when I went out to go pitch, because you got to beg for money when you have a 501c3.
Right.
I'd take my very nice, well-heeled neighbors out to lunch and liquor them up, and I'd be like, I'm running this nonprofit. And so, and I'd tell them what I did, and they were like, oh, that's great. Here's a nice check. But when I tried to sucker them into coming into like Oakland or, Bayview Hunters Point with me, they were like, yeah, like probably not. So, or sometimes they'd say yes, but they'd never show up. It's stuff like that. And I think that largely it was because they just didn't want to connect with the kids emotionally. Like it was too hard for them. It was too challenging. And it's a really painful thing, to listen to a kid talk about, their brother who got shot around the corner, or their mom who's strung out, or a prostitute, or, whatever it is, right? And we heard a lot of pretty gritty stories in those rooms. So I kept thinking, like, man, we're really losing the ability to empathize. Like we, as a society, like there's no course in terms.
Oh my God! Have you read the internet? That is,
yes.
It's almost a complete lack of empathy.
Yes, total. And I think, this has a lot to do with our cell phone.
The Black Mirror.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that show.
Yeah.
But so I kept thinking, like, for me, I'm a kid who was raised on movies and on, TV, like when I was in the dark or alone, that kept me company and gave me sort of a a little bit of hope, or a little bit of reparenting, or a different perspective, or I got to travel to lands that I never would.
So that, in a way, is how you're like the characters, because she talks about
Definitely.
how the TV
Most definitely.
raised her. Yeah,
Most definitely. So
I feel like if you were a latchkey kid, or if you had, I was raised by a single mom.
Yeah.
So yeah, TV. I like to think that Captain James T. Kirk was my dad.
Yes.
That's having watched so
Yes.
many episodes of Star Trek.
Yes. Oh, we could talk about that endlessly too. I watched
yeah.
a lot of Star Trek, tons of, and it was like always on late at night. So it was like
Right.
that, and like the Twilight Zone. Sometimes
Yeah.
after the Twilight Zone, I'd be scared, so I'd have to watch The Honeymooners to take the edge off.
Right. Yeah.
So I thought, that really had a powerful effect on me in terms of shaping my heart,
Mm-hmm.
my mind, and I thought, you can make people feel shit with that art, with that medium.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just was this kind of crazy, flitting thought initially that I'm going to make a movie. And my friends were like, what are you, fucking nuts? Like, you can't even use your iPhone properly. Like, you don't know how to shoot shit, Ange. Like, you're blind as a bat. And I was like, no, I think I'm going to try it. And then I was like sitting in my therapist chair, and she was like, you should just write it. Because I thought, oh, I'll get someone else to write it for me. And she was like, no, you should just sit down and write, because you have a strong voice. And I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. So I sat down and I actually just started journaling. And it was the scene in the movie that's the little girl when her parents are like fighting and the dad's waving a knife around and stuff. It was something, it's a memory that's like burned into my memory. So I wrote that as a journal entry, and I'm like sobbing, and then I kept thinking like how powerful it would be to see that up on the screen, how cathartic it would be, and also how great it would be for kids who come from that kind of background to see that up on the screen and to be like, oh, you know what, I'm not a freak, I'm not the only one. Because I think that type of experience, like, we're all taught to just shut down around it, not talk about it, and it kind of locks us up in this prison of shame. So it just was like this gradual process. That journal entry became a script, and then I was like, well, I should really get a seasoned director, and I wanted like Nikki Cairo to do it, who did Whale Rider, who's shooting Mulan now, and it's hard for a first time anyone to kind of kick her way into this town and be like, hey, I'm gonna get like an A director to do my movie. And then I thought, I think I could do this. I have a vision in my head, and I don't know, I think I could do this. And then I, hooked up with Rick Bosner, who was the producer for Fruitvale Station. He's like, yeah, you could direct it. And then it just became this runaway freight train from there. And,
wow.
And then, all of a sudden I'm on set shooting.
Just by force of will, in a sense.
A lot, yeah, you have to really, this is a town that you can't be meek in this town and expect to get jack shit done. So you really have to just be like, I'm going to kick the door down. And so that's something that I did. Cassian actually...
That's what I was going to ask you about. The cast is so great.
Yeah, the cast
really
is
amazing cast.
Amazing. They really, and part of it is just this magic of chemistry, and and they bought off on the story, and they were just so like, their work ethic was tremendous, and they really loved the story, and they gave their heart and souls to me, and I'm so grateful and so lucky, because this movie would be shit without that.
So you did the thing where you just decided to hire yourself to do this effectively
for no money,
right? Whereas I would talk to so many aspiring filmmakers who are just like awaiting. Well, how do I get an agent? Well, who cares? You don't need an agent now. No. You don't have anything. You don't need an agent. When there's money, get an agent. You don't need one now.
That's a myth. And
that is a myth.
Is not going to go out and fight for you,
right, with
no body of work to do some film. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, you're going to fight for you.
Yes.
More than anything,
yes.
Right? So you just this is why actors are like, oh, how do I get hired to do something? Just produce yourself.
Yes.
Why do you think Tom Cruise has a production company where he basically looks for scripts where he gets to run a lot?
Yes.
He gets to run a lot in the script. He's going to develop that script.
It's this great day and age now too of the internet, right? So you can produce your own stuff for just about no money and stick it up on YouTube, or and get like a huge following there, and then a lot of production companies sort of troll, I think, YouTube to look for people who have a following, who have a strong presence on screen. So there are a lot of different ways to do it, but the truth is it's a gritty business. You're going to get turned down a lot. You're going to get your feelings hurt a lot. And you have to be your own best ally. You don't act like an asshole, but you have to really believe in yourself.
Well, clearly, you're a force of nature. Just walking through the door here. So I completely believe. But also, when you were dealing with a lot of these raising money. That's also, I think, I see the places where filmmakers, having spoken to so many filmmakers, where you see the thing that stops them. And I think that money is definitely one of the biggest obstacles. So do you think your experience in raising money for a nonprofit?
Valley. Yeah. I mean,
that helped?
I'm pretty shameless in terms of raising money, you know, and I was in sales in Silicon Valley, so I literally be like, you gonna sign this contract, fucker, or what? You know, and I would
Right.
like park people into their parking spots when I was pretty shameless. So it's a sort of a different persona that I have when I'm in that role. So yeah, fundraising is nobody's favorite thing to do, but whoever makes the money makes the movie, and that's just sort of the way it is.
Oh, wow. I mean, really, that's how you become a producer, right? Is you just you're a producer if you're the person who can bring the funding to the project.
Yeah, I've been asked a couple of times if I wanted to produce other people's films, and I'm like, I'm not going to put myself through that kind of pain to put someone else's story up. Like, I'm sorry, it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of, you know, like, it's a lot of work. Yeah, and it's a lot of rejection.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's a lot of getting your feelings hurt.
But now the film actually premiered at what festival?
CamFest in San Francisco.
Yeah,
Asian, the biggest of the Asian film festivals.
And what was that experience to then see on the big screen?
It's incredible.
At a festival,
It's incredible. It's, you know, when you see your movie play in front of an audience and they're engaged, and, you know, you see your work up there on this massive screen. It's like nothing else. I mean, it's like having a baby. Honestly, it's like having a baby and sending her off to college, you know. So it's my editor, Jeff Castelluccio, told me, he's like, that first time that you see your movie up on a big screen and the sound is perfect and it's colored and everything, most people just break down into tears, you know. And I definitely shed a few tears, and it was just this really heady, wonderful experience. And so many people I loved showed up. So it was great to play in my old hometown. And
the movie it says for Jade at the beginning.
That's my daughter.
That's your daughter? Oh, yes. Okay, great.
My
that's great.
19-year-old daughter.
Wow.
It was, and the apple of my eye, and the source of the most pain, and the biggest fucking pain in my ass. But she's pretty much my everything.
Oh, I've been through it. I have kids.
How old are yours?
They're in their 20s. They'll actually be 24 and 26.
Holy Toledo!
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
But it never ends. Like, people are like, oh, she's 19. I'm like, no, I still worry about her the same. I'm still, you know, I mean, it's just you play a different kind of role along the way.
Yeah, mine can take me out for drinks. It's awesome.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. But they're not. Neither of them they're not drinkers, or they're not into any of that stuff. I know. Well,
I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. I think that's wonderful.
But also, I mean, she's old enough to see the film.
She has seen the film.
Now, what has her reaction been? I'm guessing she's had a completely different life than you've had.
Yes, which was sort of challenging. You know, so part of the evolution of the Janine character was, aside from me, you know, having friends like that in college, you know, my daughter was basically brought up like that. And I will share with you that my daughter actually, I mean, that psych ward scene was basically my daughter, because she was one of those kids who was super hard on herself and got really anxious and depressed, and we went through a period of suicidal ideation that was horribly painful. So sometimes the movie can be a little triggering for her, but it also, you know, she's like, Mom, how are you going to talk shit to me when you did all that?
Oh no.
So I'm like, no, learn from my folly. But, you know, I think, you know, she's like, Mom, I do, you know, and I talked to her before, you know, sharing her experience with the world. And she said, I think it's important, because I do think it is. And this is a point that I try to make all the time, is I think the way the media kind of glorifies or romanticizes suicide is just something that I have a real issue with, because it's not a solution. It's not the way out. And I think that, you know, instead of focusing on details and making it like painting in this like kind of romantic haze, like even like a 13 Reasons does, I think that it's important to show how powerful it is, and sort of the grit and the tenacity and the courage it takes to move through, you know, that kind of darkness to face the light again. So, you know, I do want to be able to demonstrate that on film.
What was it like working with your lead, Annie Q, right?
Annie Q is amazing.
She's I mean,
She kills it.
Yeah, she does. Yeah, knocks
all
out of the park.
85 pounds of her.
Oh, really? She's
Fucking tiny. She's tiny. She's this tiny little doll-like creature. And in real life, she's really not. I mean, in some ways, we're very similar. I mean, she she definitely has been in the dark, and she's she's a fighter. But our backgrounds are fairly different. I mean, she's raised by a single mom, but our back, she lived in probably a better neighborhood than I did, and she did much better in school. I was always like this, on and off, on and off. Like I'd be like, oh, I'm going to fail out. Oh, I guess I better study. But she was a great student, and probably a little more guai, which in Chinese means like a good girl. So she was probably more of a good girl. But she was incredible. She offered to fly herself out to read for me. She was the first person who I read. Initially, I was like, I don't think I was ever that young or cute or sweet or vulnerable, but I realized, staring across the dinner table at my daughter and my then stepdaughter, that this character was really more their peer than it was like, the 30-year-olds who play college students now that we see sometimes. So at that point I was like, I'm going to book Annie. And I called her directly, which everyone was like, what are you, crazy? You're not supposed to do that. We have to negotiate with her. And I was like, well, but I liked her, and I know she wants the role, so, and I like the girl a lot. So I violated a lot of different protocol areas. But she was great. She came out like about a month before we shot, so she stayed with me in my house during all of pre-production. And, I think she probably like studied me a little, but we got to know each other pretty well, and we spent a lot of time together. So, we got to be pretty close. And then she went and fled the nest, left my house and got to stay with the other actors when they all flew into town. And she and Franny got pretty close, and they were a nice pod. They were a nice group. So she was phenomenal. Really hard worker, really dedicated, and really unafraid to kind of like really go to the dark.
So not having directed a feature before this,
or anything at all,
okay, that's ballsy. I mean, like what was the preparation in terms of your prep of like, was there like, well, I'm going to read this book, or I'm going to see this documentary about
I watched
directing.
A lot of movies. I just watched a lot of movies, and I just sort of like concocted in my mind what I wanted it to look like, what I wanted it to feel like, and I think a lot of my time was focused on working with the actors to kind of give them enough backstory and really bring them into the world and give them what they needed to build the character. So, it was a pretty psychological. Like my casting director was like, every time you cast, it's like a therapy session, because I didn't need to know what the people are like, and like how to push their buttons, how not to, how to take care of them, because I felt I'm still like a mommy, so I was very much like, I'll push you to the dark, and then like, let me give you a little soup. Are you okay, honey? Are you all right now? So we would have like a little release ceremony too. But
isn't that also part of the director's job, is to be kind of a therapist? I mean, that's been said by many directors.
I think so.
So you just have that just having been to the dark and then out of the dark.
Yeah. It's just sort of how I'm wired, like I think we're all wired differently, and I think that is like my superpower. Like when I was a little girl, my friends and I would sit around and just talk about like, if you're a superhero, what would your superpower be? And, everyone wanted to fly or be like the strongest person, and I was always like, I'm going to heal people. And they were like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And I'm like, oh, really? Well, when you fucking fly your ass into a building and you smash your head, you're going to fucking come crying to me. And then we'll see who has the best superpower. So it's just always how I've been wired,
So now that it's screened at other festivals as well.
A bunch of other ones.
Yeah.
We played in Montreal, in Vancouver, in New York, in Philadelphia, in San Diego. Here in LA, we had a great run with the LA Asian Pacific Film Festival.
And what's been the reaction?
I think people really resonate with it. I think people engage. I think a lot of people can relate. I think it's sort of like I think everyone carries around some level of painful experience from their childhood, and I think that this sort of, it invites people to kind of take a look at that and be honest about it, and not and try to shed the shame around it, and just sort of process it and move through it. So it's we've gotten great response, and every time I play it to an audience, I wind up talking to a lot of people for many hours.
Yeah, well, I think our our managing editor at Film Threat, Alan Ng, I think he might have seen it at the LA Asian Pacific.
Oh, great.
Yeah. But Bradley, we have a whole team of writers from all over the world. But just to cover the amount of films coming our way. But what I was struck by too is that it's not, in terms of Asian cinema, it's not the type that you would think. You know what I mean?
No, it's not.
And I mean in a positive way. It's a portrayal that's not
it's
expected.
not your everyday. Yeah, no, it's stereotype defying. I would say.
Yes, which is a good thing.
It is.
Yeah.
It hurt me initially because people didn't really know what to do with it. They didn't know what box to put it in. So I got feedback.
Well, that's
like,
good.
Well,
I think
it's Asian, but it's urban, which is code for black.
Right. Yeah.
And so they didn't really know what box to put it in. So it baffled me a little.
Well, I'm curious, like, how you think, because you played at that festival, you played at other festivals. It used
We
to.
just played at Film Independent, which was a great experience.
Oh, that's cool.
We had this fantastic Q&A with Elvis Mitchell, who is a dog.
Oh, I love Elvis.
He's fantastic.
I love. He and I have we've known each other since he used to write for the Detroit Free Press.
Oh.
Back when I was in Detroit.
Okay.
We had something of a rivalry. But I love him.
Yeah.
Every time we hang
He was
out.
great.
He's
a
awesome.
Very gracious host.
Really cool. But I'm just curious how you feel about, like, what would bother me as a kid going to festivals is when they would take films by the women filmmakers, right? Or the black filmmakers, and they would put them in a separate program completely.
Yeah.
And it would, I felt that
Very
was
segregationist.
Yeah, it was marginalizing.
Yeah.
Like, why can't we just have, these are the movies, and they're all good movies, because we wouldn't be showing them to you if they weren't good films. But I'm not sure that I see, and this is, and for those listening, if this is your first time listening, I am an old white guy. So just to be clear.
He's very hip, though, guys.
Yes, well, we'll see about that. But, like, old white, but it just used to bug me because, I had non-white friends, and just like, well, why is your movie, like, in the black filmmakers program, which is, in a smaller room at an off time? I thought it was very disrespectful, but like, which bugged me. But like, I felt it was marginalizing. I felt like, why don't we just show the movies? Why does there have to be sort of the identity behind it defines it? I feel like it should be. What it says to me, what bothers me is that it's like, are you saying I'm not capable of empathy?
Yeah. That
I can't empathize with the characters. It's not my gender, not my race.
Right.
So I'm just curious what your feelings are on all that.
I really strove to put forth a film that was about the solidarity of the human experience. It is Asian. There's a white girl too. Whoa. There's a black girl. Whoa. But I wanted to sort of present, again, this palette of stereotypes and invite people to kind of buy into the stereotype initially, but then to peel back the layers and see that there really is this connective tissue that binds us all together, and we're really kind of the fucking same.
Right.
We share the same experiences. We all love our kids. There's really fundamentally more about us that's similar than different, I think. And I think that film is a wonderful way to be able to show that. So yeah, it bugs the shit out of me. I'm like, what the fuck, guys? I just don't understand. I don't understand. Especially when I got that kind of feedback, I was like, no, it's a universal story. As I think all good stories are universal, and they resonate with us all in some ways. Obviously, there are some things about the Chinese culture that some of us are gonna get more about my film. You know what I mean? Like, but it's all kind of the same. We all are we want our parents to approve of us. We feel less than sometimes. Some of us have some damage that we strive to process and to move through. So
especially with your father, effectively in the film, not saying "I love you." Is that an Asian thing? I know
very much an Asian thing.
In Japanese culture, they don't say "I love you" as frequently. Say as Americans do.
The Chinese, we don't say that. We don't really say that.
So you don't say "I love you."
No, the old school Chinese really don't say. They're not comfortable with that. There was this hilarious article that I read written by an Asian dude who was like, talked to people who like tried to break that barrier with their parents, and the one guy, he's on the phone with his father, and he's like, "I love you," and father's like, "Are you drunk?" So it's just, I think it's also an immigrant type of thing. Like they show their love with giving you the food off their plate,
right?
By sending you to school, by yelling at you because they want you to have a better life. I think that there's just a different ethos.
But doesn't that like inform, in a way, how we learn to love from our parents? Is how
Sure.
we love into adulthood, and sometimes it can be healthy ways,
Yes.
and sometimes destructive
Yes.
ways,
Yes.
like you mentioned, yelling.
Yes. Is that not constructive?
Well, I mean, I went thinking of my own relationships. I know there have been ones where it's like, oh, that the yelling, you like conflict and aggressiveness,
Yes.
but that's not a healthy way to love.
No, it's
so you
not.
have to kind of deconstruct that from
You
being
do.
a kid.
You do. And I think I went through years and years of therapy and have to practice this all the time. So, I was with Larry for, when we were shooting the film. Mm-hmm. Lovely man, and we were together for like 10 years. And the poor guy was like, what the fuck is happening here? Because we would fight, and I would be like breaking shit, and I'd be like, you are going to stay in this room and fucking fight with me until this. And he was like, no, I'm not crazy, bitch. Like, I am so out of here. And then I'd be texting him all kinds of nasty shit. And I remember it kind of dawned on me like, oh, I'm not really within my rights to be like abusive in this way. Like, this is actually abusive. So this is not the way to fight. So I've stopped breaking things, and I've stopped calling people horrible names when I'm angry. I check that. I do check that.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like, and also similar to you, I also went through years of therapy, and I still enjoy a good self-help book.
Yes.
I will read a self-help.
Tune-up?
A little tune-up. That's exactly what I think of it as. A tune-up where I'll read the book, and then there'll be like, okay, a lot of them have sort of similar information, but then there'll be that one kernel of like
yes.
Yeah, like that kind of moment where it's just like, oh, okay, it was worth it to read this book for 6-8 hours and get that one thing. It's like,
Definitely.
all right, I'm going to integrate that. That's good. But I feel like I'm not done. Like,
No,
as
you're never
old as
done.
I am,
No, you're never done.
and I have kids who are not just grown, they're grown and pay for themselves. Like they're
Wow.
not.
What's
they're not,
that like?
Yes, I know, it's great. Well, the only thing I share my mobile plan with my daughter, because why would I? Because you're getting a better deal.
Yeah.
Why would we have separate ones? But that is, I pay for nothing else. So she self-supports herself. My son supports himself.
Congratulations.
Yes. Well, but then I kind of feel like I'm still still having revelations about
It's true.
myself in this. So this doesn't end, is what I'm saying.
It never ends. It's
Yes.
it's sort of, I liken it to physical fitness. I'm like, you can like go to like a fat farm or something like that for like a month and, attain a level of fitness. But unless you're like working out consistently, you'll slip back. So for me, I have to consistently check myself and kind of like, meditate or do whatever. I ride a lot of SoulCycle, and I try to own my shit. I think that at the end of the day is kind of like, because like my daughter and I, we actually just this weekend got into a massive fight, and I was like, well, if you don't like it, I suggest you move out. Here's what you can do. Take your shit and fucking get a job. And, and then I was like, oh, and you were kind of out of control. So the next day we're both like, and I'm like, I always feel shitty when we have a fight, so I'm like, I'm sorry, let me work on this. Like I was really triggered by this or that. And, you hurt my feelings or, and I can own that now. So, and she is very, very sophisticated in terms of her ability to kind of assess where she is mentally and emotionally and be able to communicate that also.
But now, wait, do you ever see those couples that never fight?
That freaks me out.
See, exactly.
I don't think that's natural.
I think it's fine to fight. Mm-hmm. I think it's more about how you make up.
Yeah.
Like, are you
able to have some rules too
Right.
within your fighting, I think, in terms of like, okay, don't step over that because that would really kind of like rip at the foundation
Right.
of the relationship. So unfortunately, I've been guilty of that. But I think that to the extent that you can communicate cleanly and then, make up and own your shit, like here's where it was coming from. It's a lot, I remember when my daughter was really little, she's like running around the pool and I'm like, don't run like that. And then I was like, okay, well, that just sounds like it's just some arbitrary, like way to try to rob a kid of fun. So I sat her down and I was like, look, it's really slippery by the pool. If you run around like that and you're not watching, you're not really careful, you can slip and you can bust your head open. that's why, and I worry about you because I love you so much. And she's like, all right, well, that explains it a little bit.
Oh, wow. And so she was responsive.
Yeah, she was.
And you were able to reason with her.
I was. My daughter, definitely, she's always been like a very, she's an only child. She was raised by single parents, so she definitely was a little more adult probably than others. But yeah, so she would be able to. Actually, I used to ask her, I'd be like, why are you so much nicer to your dad than to me? And she'd be like, it's because he's just a little more sensitive than you. So yeah, this is like when she's like 4. So she has an astonishing ability to sort of assess humanity and understand what drives people.
I kind of feel like you need to make a movie about your relationship with your daughter.
Actually, funny you should say. I have one. It's a pilot for a TV series, and it's largely about that. It's about a mother who lives in this sort of like very suburban kind of Stepford type of environment. She feels like she's doing right by her kid, but she feels very isolated. She doesn't feel like she can be herself. And then her kid becomes suicidal, so it prompts this like exodus out of that environment. And so half of it is the girl's sort of like girl interrupted road to recovery, and half of it is the mother decides that she's going to become a madam to fund her life. So it's called Madam Mommy.
Oh wow. Okay, this seems like HBO all over it, right? Like
I'd like that.
HBO,
like
Showtime.
The Holy Grail. Yeah. Well, we've got to be able to swear, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
They can't show boobs and.
It's not a network show.
It's not a network show.
It's not a network show.
I'm probably never going to be a network gal.
No, especially MDMA. The stuff. I mean there's the sex scenes I did not expect, because I also think we've kind of, when it comes to sex in movies, it's pretty antiseptic these days. I think we become kind of prudes in a sense. When you look at like films of the 70s and
oh my God, like they were like everything.
Right, sexuality was explored, and more difficult topics were explored, and
I think people are afraid these days that they're going to offend someone or something's going to so. But I mean, I was just lucky that my girls, I was like, in that threesome scene, I was like, just let it go, let it go, and then and it was important for them to already have chemistry and to be really comfortable with each other. And, there was a big to-do about showing boobs, and, I had to write these nudity clauses and stuff like that. But, at the end, I think it wasn't, I wanted to make sure that it wasn't gratuitous, and it was really about the girls bonding with each other,
Well, I mean, I think you could almost say that directing any scene in a film, if it's going to be authentic, is like directing a nude scene, because you're trying to get your actors to be emotionally vulnerable and
stripped down
and naked on camera and
Yep.
comfortable with it.
Yes, that's why I was such a stickler about, because a lot of actresses said no because of the nudity. Like, that was a deal killer. And actually, Francesca got the role because she was like, yeah, show my tits. Also, and thank God, because she's phenomenal. I mean, she's amazing.
Wait, she's in Eastwood, right?
Yeah.
She's
daughter of Clint and Frances Fisher, a phenomenal actress who was like the redheaded mom in Titanic.
Wow. So has Clint seen the movie?
I don't think he has seen that scene.
Maybe he saw an edited version.
I think, she mentioned something about wanting to show him a pared down version.
A pared down version. Oh, wow. Well, that's...
Although I think at some point he's probably going to see it. And I think it's not really an offensive scene. I mean,
no, not at all.
The girls are beautiful, and it's kind of a...
It's not graphic. I mean, it's not graphic. I mean, it's clear what's going on.
Yeah.
And I love the way the character talks about sex. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a recent movie even where a female character's been that open.
Oh, where she like rips him down for a good head?
Well, yes. That scene was such a great scene. But like, why? I mean...
I think women are sent a lot of different messages in society around sex. It's sort of like, okay, everyone has to be super sexy, and like, maybe you should kiss a girl to titillate a guy, like whatever the fuck it is, right? But we're not really taught to own our sexuality for ourselves. Mm-hmm. So that's just sort of, what I'm not preaching, but what I'm saying. I'm like, just own it for yourself. Don't make it for don't formulate it for some dude.
Right.
Don't take too many hints from porn, because I watched it and I'm like, that is not real life.
Right.
And that is not enjoyable, I'm just telling you.
But also, I think porn is, I mean, when you look at like a generation of kids who've grown up with those black mirrors, the phones, right? It's so accessible. It's so, you have a generation of kids that I think are desensitized and don't know what healthy
I think that's right.
Sex is.
I think that's right. I try to, sex comes up a lot in the groups that I do with the middle school kids because they're pretty active at a pretty young age. And a lot of the girls are, they feel a lot of shame. They're like, oh, well, this one called me a slut or, like I was promiscuous or whatever it is. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, I don't care who you fuck. I don't care how many people you fuck as long as you're safe. But let's take a look at where that's coming from. Because generally speaking, my experience has been that when you're throwing yourself around out there kind of recklessly, it's not coming from a place of like balance. Like you're not really doing it for yourself. So that's what I'm more interested in rather than like, your tally. But also be safe because there's, bad stuff that can happen to you out there.
Well, it sounds like this next project will delve in that area. I mean, the sex will be a part of that show. I mean, it has to be.
Yeah, she's selling it.
Yeah.
She's selling it. So I think, sex is it's sort of a taboo issue, but it's also, and I think there are fine lines. I think like if you're a woman and you're sexual, you kind of, there's a negative connotation still, I think, in this world, in this society. So, I'd hope to break that down a little so that women can enjoy sex also.
Yeah, I mean, shouldn't that, well, please, then you need to do this show because I think all we've got right now is Game of Thrones sex, and that one is with a dragon or you're in maybe not the best representation.
Some of it is so gratuitous. I'm like, why in the hell does this need to happen in a brothel? I'm like, it just seems really gratuitous to me.
But at least it's evenly, men and women in terms of nudity, right?
We see dudes winkies, which, for a while I was like, I am not seeing any schlong on TV, and I just don't understand why.
Well, I love that show for what it is. I mean, it's a
great escapism. Love it.
Right, it's epic. I think it's better than Star Wars in terms of just the layers and the characters and the depth that it goes in.
Yes.
I mean, it's a fantastic show.
Yes.
So you should. So you're. I mean, I really am just so blown away by like that this was your first effort, and that the way in which you got it made. Are you also, obviously you're developing this other project. Are you putting yourself out there for other directing gigs? Is this something that's or are you trying to, are you trying to play that game? And what's that game like?
It's,
if you're trying to do that.
This is a rat race. I mean, it's a very
it's crazy town, right?
Bare knuckle kind of business. Luckily, I have like a great tribe around me and they've introduced me to wonderful people. And I've been lucky enough to have like great projects sort of, come my way. At the end of the day, though, I'm a 52-year-old woman. I'm not like a 25-year-old kid.
No, we're the same age. So there you go.
Fire horse,
look at
baby.
that.
1966.
Yeah, I'm 65, 65. So it's right at the, sorry.
On the cusp.
Yeah.
What the fuck was I saying?
Sorry.
So I have a limited amount of time to be able to tell the stories that are important to me. So if a wonderful script comes my way and it's a story that really resonates with me, then I'll do it. But otherwise, I'm going to put my effort into getting stories that I feel are important made. So I have another one called Blue Blooded, which is sort of like a gritty cop indie, set in New York, and largely about sort of the whole phenomenon of PTSD that happens in cops and in the people who they're supposed to shepherd. I hung out with some great New York cops, and they told me some wonderful stories, some pretty hair-raising ones too. Like I just got tired of opening my Facebook feed and seeing like yet another kid of color got shot dead and we don't give a fuck. So I was like, we need to really examine very carefully through both the cops' lens and the kids' lens what happens, day-to-day life to cause this to coalesce into this set of circumstances where it's happening, at an epidemic rate. So yeah.
Oh God, yeah. Well, that. I feel like we're saddled with so many problems now, or at least let's say we have more awareness of more problems because
we're very complex now too.
Because of devices telling us more news in a day than we would consume in a week.
I'm a firm believer that the health of a society is very well gauged by the well-being of their youth. And like we got babies who are getting thrown in cages, and we have kids in Flint, Michigan who don't have any fucking drinking water, and our cream of the crop, the ones who are like, going to the great schools and stuff, are suicidal. So I think we really need to take a bracing look at who we are and what we are right now. And you know, I do believe I'm very much optimistic about the future for us, but you know, it's going to be work. And I think we all have to conjure our better angels to shout down our demons right now. That's kind of what it's about.
Well, you need to take some of these human stories and apply them in like a Star Trek that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Well, because you mentioned at the beginning of the top of the conversation, we're talking about nerd stuff, right?
I love
Logan's
Star
Run
Trek.
and Star Trek and
Yes.
nerd things. So take the human story you're trying to tell, put it that, and then it's more broad.
I had a friend, Didier,
appeal.
who actually was like, we were watching Star Trek and goes, I find out more about our current culture through Star Trek than from Friends. And I thought, you're right. You know, because there was this one episode and I was like, oh, this is about depression. Someone of mine is depressed. You know, so yeah. So I love Star Trek. And the movies, I love J.J. Abrams movies. I loved those movies. Like, I saw them 5 times in the theater and like jumped up screaming at the end of them. Yeah. So
well, I think science fiction, fantasy, whatnot, has always been a safe place to talk about things that are very difficult.
Yes.
Whereas if you say to your friend, hey, I want to go see that movie about depression, it's opening in the theater this weekend. But if I want to see a movie about a depressed superhero, that would be maybe a Batman movie, probably.
I agree. You know, my daughter didn't like vegetables when she was growing up, so I would just chop them up real fine and throw them in chili, and she would get vegetables in her chili. So I think that's sort of the messaging. You know, you kind of gotta like chop those like humanitarian messages up in a tiny bit and put it in this like really savory, delicious chili.
My mom, okay, I'll tell you how my mom handled it. She lied to me, and she said, she got me to eat broccoli, and to this day, I love broccoli.
Nice.
I love broccoli because
Good job, Mom.
because I love giant monster movies, right? Godzilla and the original old school Toho movies.
Yes.
Ultraman, Johnny Sacco and his flying robot, whatever. Love those. Grew up watching those. She said to me, you're a monster. You're a giant monster, and these are trees. These are trees. And from that day forward, loved broccoli.
Yes.
Yeah, and now I actually like broccoli, just like it. I don't need my mom telling me I'm a monster. But this was how she tricked a 3-4-year-old kid into eating. So this is
clever woman.
We have to play these tricks, right? With the kids.
Yes.
We get to.
So I mean, I kind of did that with MDMA. You know, I'm trying to sort of, again, you know, present this sort of tale of the solidarity of the human experience. But you know, hey, I know sex sells. They're very salacious aspects of this movie, and that's fine.
But it's not played in an exploitative way.
Good.
It's not portrayed in a, the kind of movies that you and I grew up on, those 80s movies where the guys all have to get laid by the end of the movie.
Yes.
That,
it's not like that.
Well, there was a movie like that recently, but it was all female cast, Blockers.
Oh, I didn't see that.
It was really good.
I didn't see that.
It was good. You should. I think that
I'll put that on my list.
It was one of we were talking about earlier films that deal more frankly with sexuality. That film did it in a very smart way.
Yeah.
But they tricked you because they marketed it as a sex comedy.
Right. Girls Trip, I think, did a good job with that, too.
Oh, I haven't seen Girls Trip.
Oh, my God.
I've got to see Girls Trip.
I love that movie. I love that movie.
All right.
I've watched it like 5 times on HBO just because it's hilarious.
Okay, I'm going to watch it. I'm going to watch it. And you know what? I'm probably going to have brunch and have bottomless mimosas while I'm watching it. That's going to be because I want to get right in the zone.
Oh, I'll join you.
Oh, God. Well, Angie, thank you so much.
It's
a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Super fun.
The movie is MDMA.
Yes.
It is going to be out when is it going to be out? It's September 14th. It's coming September 14th.
Go see it, guys, in the theater. It plays really well on the big screen.
Go see it in the theater September 14th. MDMA.
Yes.
And Angie, I want to have you back on the podcast when you're working on your next film or on your next project because you're amazing to talk to. This is a great conversation.
I had a really fun time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome.
MDMA. Don't miss it.
I have a treat for you. Primo X, made by my loving hands.
You're the Mystery X goddess.
Guilty.
You know, you are a tough nut to crack. It's like you're guarding this secret. Who is Angie Wang?
There you go. I'm just who you see in front of you.
We would be happy to distribute the ecstasy.
For a fee.
You have a big heart, and you're brilliant and beautiful to boot. Maybe you should slow down, take some time.